Wall Street, 1929. Οι τιμές στο χρηματιστήριο είναι στο ζενίθ. Μέχρι 8 εκατομμύρια δολάρια αλλάζουν χέρια καθημερινά. 24 Νοεμβρίου. Το χρηματιστήριο καταρρέει. Μέχρι το βράδυ έχουν χαθεί 9 δισεκατομμύρια δολάρια. Το χρηματιστήριο δεν μπορεί πια να επεξεργαστεί την τεράστια εισρωή πληροφοριών. Wall Street, 1985. Από τον 46όροφο ουρανοξύστη στο Μανχάταν, η φίρμα Salomon Brothers κυριαρχεί στη διεθνή αγορά επενδύσεων. Οποιοδήποτε γεγονός σε όλο τον κόσμο που θα μπορούσε να επηρεάσει την κίνηση των μετοχών καταγράφεται αμέσως σε χιλιάδες οθόνες κομπιούτερ.
As a result of increasing computer capability, we are able to generate a huge amount of information. We have a variety of screens here throughout our organization where traders, salespeople can quickly retrieve information, put it into analytical form, and then speak to clients about it. The understanding of economics, of finance, of the workings of a variety of financial and economic systems is far greater today than it was in 1929, and one of the reasons is the speed of communication and the depth of communication and the ability to apply analytical techniques to the amount of information that is being generated. In that sense, I think we are not in 1929.
«15 εκατομμύρια άνεργοι και 50 εκατομμύρια φτωχοί. Μια χώρα με έλλειψη θεσμών που να ανακουφίζουν τέτοια δυστυχία. Κατά κύματα οι άνεργοι εγκαταλείπουν τις πόλεις ψάχνοντας απεγνωσμένα για δουλειά. Μερικοί βρίσκουν εποχιακή δουλειά στους οπορώνες της Καλιφόρνιας. Εδώ και 50 χρόνια η περιοχή έχει γίνει η κύρια έκφραση του καπιταλιστικού ονείρου. Είναι γνωστή σαν Silicon Valley. Σε μια ακτίνα 60 χιλιόμετρων έχουν συγκεντρωθεί πάνω από 1.000 επιχειρήσεις υψηλής τεχνολογίας. Το silicon, που σημαίνει πυρίτιο, είναι η πρώτη ύλη από την οποία γίνονται τα chip, όπου περικλίνεται όλη η ευφυΐα των κομπιούτερ. Τα chip αυτά, σαν τον ήχη ενός νεογέννητου, αλλάζουν σε σύντομο χρονικό διάστημα τη βιομηχανική βάση της κοινωνίας μας. Η επιστήμη άρχισε να δεσπόζει στη βιομηχανία στη δεκαετία του 30 και αυτό οφείλεται στο Πανεπιστήμιο του Στάνφορντ και τον αντιπρίτανη Φρέντερικ Τέρμεν, καθηγητή της ηλεκτρονικής. Το όνειρο του Τέρμεν είναι να δημιουργήσει δομές που να εμποδίσουν την επανεμφάνιση ενός 1929. Θεσπίζει θεμελιώδεις δεσμούς ανάμεσα στο Πανεπιστήμιο και τη βιομηχανία. Πολλές από τις πρώτες εταιρείες στο Silicon Valley, που σήμερα είναι πάμπλουτες επιχειρήσεις, κτίστηκαν στην ίδια την περιοχή του Πανεπιστημίου. Άλλη μια μορφή κλειδί στην ιστορία του Silicon Valley είναι ο William Shockley, συνεφευρέτης της κρυσταλλολιχνίας, του τρανζίστορ, πράγμα που συνέβη το 1947. Λίγα χρόνια μετά ίδρυσε στο Silicon Valley δική του εταιρεία.
A lot of credit, I think, has to go to Dr. William Shockley, who started Shockley Semiconductor Laboratory, the first semiconductor company here in Palo Alto, back in about 1955. It isn't that his company was a success, but he had the idea that he didn't have to work for a salary for the rest of his life, and that the way to make money was to start his own company and have it be a success. And it wasn't a success in a financial sense, but it was very successful in attracting these 8 brilliant young men, Robert Noyce being one of them, who then gotten the fever from Shockley. It's a contagious thing, this entrepreneurial spirit. They in turn started, among them, about 40 other semiconductor companies. People learn from those models, and I think the fever spreads and grows and gets hotter because of the role of personal models. Individuals, they're mostly men, but a few women, who have been very successful at making a lot of money in a hurry through their brains by taking risks in starting new ventures, all organized and made possible by a new technological innovation.
The group of people that I was working with at this time was the Fairchild crew. Fairchild did indeed set up one of the premier laboratories in solid-state electronics that existed at the time. And then later on here at Intel, where we were dedicated to making the best large-scale integrated circuits that we could possibly do. And so it was a focus strictly on making large-scale integrated circuits. Very enthusiastic crew and a fun crew to work with.
Ο Νόις συνδύασε από την αρχή το ταλέντο του σαν εφευρέτης με την άποψη ότι οποιαδήποτε εφεύρεση πρέπει να έχει και οικονομική επιτυχία.
In general, what we did in the integrated circuit was to put many different transistors together without ever having separated them into individual transistors. The main effect of that was to drastically reduce the cost of digital electronic equipment. The first transistors that I recall making were sold for several tens of dollars a piece. Now we can sell hundreds of thousands of transistors in an integrated circuit for a price less than that. The volume of transistors that has been produced by the industry has increased at a remarkable rate. We throw away more bad transistors every day than the industry produced in the first 5 years of its existence. It's truly amazing.
Intel is not a low-pressure environment. I would say Intel is a highly competitive place, a place in which most employees are keenly aware of our position in the marketplace, or the competitive nature, the precarious nature of every victory that we have. We can't ever relax in that, and people are aware of it, just like in a competitive team, that in the moment you accept that your position is invulnerable, that people cannot catch up with you, that's when the game is over for you. We have to translate that outside competitive pressure to individual competitive drive that will strive each of us to higher degrees of achievement. We are not a business in which individual employees, individual engineers can achieve their own games. We are essentially a team game. Much like a team sport, we are teamwork. And we have to foster an awareness amongst our employees to work together as a team, to concentrate on the output of the team rather than on the output of the individual. One of my colleagues, who is the senior vice president of the company, Les Vedas, said that what drives this industry is technology and paranoia. And I think that is very, very much true. And if you'll find exactly with a competitive athlete, what drives them is paranoia to a very large extent.
There's another side to Silicon Valley, which is not so glamorous as the side that we hear so much about. And this is the third world woman, a skilled manual employee, often operating machinery that may be worth a lot of money, perhaps several $1 million in some cases, does not pay very well relative to the cost of living, which is very exorbitant. Many of these women are Filipino immigrants to the United States, or from Mexico, or especially in more recent years, Vietnamese war refugees who are concentrated in this part of Northern California. An attractive aspect of this work is you don't need any kind of education in particular. You're trained on the job in the first couple of weeks that you work there. So you don't need any particular skills or education to begin with. You do need to be a quick study, and you need to have good eyesight. Most of all, you have to be able to tolerate lots of monotony. A semiconductor chip doesn't look quite so beautiful when you've seen 500 of them an hour as when you look at one of them, or the first one. So if you look at these third world women, they're the proletariat of the information society that Silicon Valley represents.
Hi everyone. I think everyone knows I'm Jimmy Trabig. I want to start the show in a little different way because my daddy's watching this in the Houston, Texas office of Tandem, and I want to assure Dad that this isn't our normal TV show. We're here today celebrating 10 years as a company, our 10-year anniversary, which is something that only happens once. One of the unique things about Tandem is that after 10 years, we probably have more people left than almost any company you can find. Now, I don't know if that's good or bad, because it may mean no one else would hire any of us.
Στο Silicon Valley, ο τρόπος διαχείρισης λαμβάνεται σοβαρά υπόψη. Είναι γνωστός σαν επιχειρησιακή κουλτούρα. Στην Tandem δουλεύουν σκληρά για να μην αγχώνονται και τα αποτελέσματα μέχρι σήμερα είναι εντυπωσιακά.
Tandem was founded in November 74, and we shipped our first computer in May of 76, right on schedule. And so we grew from 0 to 100 million in about 5 years, and we're at a 600 million rate now. So we grew very fast. From 0 to 100 million was pretty much exactly on our original business plan that we wrote when we started Tandem, which is sometimes studied in business school because we came so close.
Με τις μεθόδους των προκατασκευασμένων κτισμάτων, ένα νέο εργοστάσιο για τσίπ μπορεί να ανεγερθεί μέσα σε λίγες μέρες ή να ξεμονταριστεί το ίδιο γρήγορα, ανάλογα με την οικονομική πορεία της εταιρείας.
The year we started, we were the only company formed in Silicon Valley that received $1 million. In fact, in all the United States, it was just $10 million invested that year. But in 78 and 79, the amount went from 10 million to 1.3 billion. And so we have 3 new companies every month here, or more. A tremendous number of new companies.
Το 1984 επενδύθηκαν $3 εκατομμύρια σε εταιρείες από κεφαλαιοκράτες που αυθονούν στο Silicon Valley. Ένας από αυτούς είναι και ο Don Valentine, που στην περασμένη δεκαετία ξεκίνησε με τις επενδύσεις του εταιρείες σαν την Apple και την Atari.
Starting a company is one of the hardest things to do in terms of personal commitment, time consumption, energy, potential of disappointment. And that the people who do it do not do it merely for money, merely to get rich. And you're dealing often with entrepreneurs who are technical by background. So they are very oriented toward thinking about how to do things better, how to make better products. As a consequence, that's paramount in their thinking. That's what initiates their concept of doing a company. The second thing that I think is much more important to them than making money, since all of them presently or previously have worked in a larger company or big company, they want to do a company their way. They have very specific cultural things they want to change. There are very important human environmental conditions that they want to change. That is not to say that the larger U.S. Technology companies are unpleasant places to work. It merely means that these are younger people who have new ideas, and these ideas are not so easily implemented in a large structured company. So what they want to do is create their own environment.
We have to wear these T-shirts. This is a Tandem Hong Kong T-shirt, and the back is, how fast is the down computer? And of course, we're the only people that build computers that don't fail.
Ο Pierre Lamond είναι Γάλλος μηχανικός που ήρθε στην Καλιφόρνια το 1957 και έγινε συνιδρυτής σε μερικές από τις πρώτες εταιρείες του Silicon Valley.
Nous, ici, dans le groupe dont je fais partie, nous faisons surtout des investissements, ce qu'on appelle au premier tour, c'est-à-dire tout à fait au démarrage. Et même, nous faisons souvent des investissements de 50 000 $, où par exemple, nous avons deux individus qui, en fait, en ce moment, dans un bureau tout près d'ici, sont en train d'écrire leur business plan, sont en train d'écrire leur plan. Nous leur avons fait une avance très faible, 50 000 $, pour les aider à démarrer pendant 3 mois. Il est possible qu'ils vont faire un plan qui nous plaira. À ce moment-là, on fera un premier tour qui sera peut-être de $1 million ou même plus. Et on invitera d'autres capitalistes de risque à nous joindre, parce qu'en général, nous ne sommes pas seuls à faire un investissement. En général, on fait, comme on dit en anglais, un syndicat. Enfin, on amène d'autres partenaires. Nous cherchons, nous, à obtenir en fait un gain d'environ 25% par an. Si on obtient plus, tant mieux, mais ce n'est pas sûr. Et c'est aussi un jeu, vous savez, où on peut perdre, et si on perd tout. Nous avons fait des investissements où nous avons perdu toute notre mise. Mais d'un autre côté, si vous en faites un ou deux qui réussissent très bien, vous pouvez gagner 10, 20 et même 50 fois votre mise.
Πολλούς ξένους έχει προσελκύσει το Silicon Valley, προσφέροντάς τους ευκαιρίες που δεν είχαν στην πατρίδα τους. Αυτή η εταιρεία δικτύου κομπιούτερ ξεκίνησε πρόσφατα με $2 εκατομμύρια. Ανήκει στον 28χρονο Γάλλο Eric Benamou.
Au départ, je suis venu aux États-Unis surtout avec l'intention de poursuivre des études de 3e cycle à Stanford. Et en fait, sans vraiment d'idée préconçue au point de vue du lancement d'une société. J'avais toujours eu l'intention de lancer une société à un stade de ma carrière. Mais finalement, ça s'est fait surtout par le fait que le moment des choses est si actif que les occasions sont présentées plus vite que prévu. Après mes études à Stanford, j'ai eu rapidement l'occasion de travailler dans plusieurs entreprises de haute technologie dans la Silicon Valley. Et à un certain moment, l'occasion s'est présentée de faire un changement, c'est-à-dire de quitter une entreprise établie. Et à ce même moment, les conditions étaient réunies pour lancer une société avec des bases de financement valables.
Si vous voulez démarrer vous n'obtiendrez pas le même support d'infrastructure financière qu'il y a ici. Et puis, vous savez, le venture capitaliste américain est tout à fait capable d'investir plusieurs millions de $, dans une compagnie, mais de laisser aux entrepreneurs 30 à 40% de la compagnie. Alors que les banquiers européens ont une idée dans leur tête, c'est que s'ils mettent de l'argent, ils prennent 90% de la compagnie. Alors à ce moment-là, pourquoi partir? Pourquoi quitter un emploi stable avec IBM, prendre des risques pour avoir 1% d'une compagnie? C'est pas la peine.
The people we deal with are oftentimes people of very unusual personal styles. People who are very careful about going to work on a special Italian 10-speed bicycle which they'll take into their office, so as to ensure that neither the sun nor the rain affect the performance capabilities of the bicycle, but whose creative styles are naturally disobedient, whose natural style is non-conventional. And some of our best investments have been populated by technical people, but also marketing and management people who use non-conventional solutions to standard problems.
I work in what they call translators, teaching the computers to speak a language which is halfway between what people can understand and the actual language that the computers understand internally.
Are you going to use any of that experience?
Look down. No. Well, I hope to teach him English. I don't know if I'll be able to teach him anything else.
So here's somebody who's trying to turn their brains or their brain potential into money. And they live a pretty straight life, nothing very fancy in their tastes and so on. Come out here and work very hard, very long hours, very many days a week or days a month. Very common not to have any holidays, no Sundays, no Sundays, no vacations of any kind, maybe for a year at a time. And when there's a big push on at their company, a big push to get a new product out, that may go on 6 months for a year, maybe then they'll have a couple months where they only work a 40-hour week or maybe a 60-hour week, and then back to working every day and maybe 12, 14 hours a day. So it's a very high degree of work involvement. If they have good luck and are venturesome, such as by being an early employee of a new company that does well, and by no means do they all do well, or if they find some friends as partners and have a new idea for a new product and get venture capital money, start their own company, by the time they're 40, they're a millionaire, at least once, at least on paper. That is to say they own stock in a company, their own company usually, worth $1 million or more. And then perhaps their lifestyle changes a little. They work just as hard. By this time they've been divorced at least once and possibly twice, may have children by some of their marriages, don't know their children, don't know their wife or wives because they don't have much time. They're very, very much workaholics.
Το 1945 η Ιαπωνία χάνει τον πόλεμο και η οικονομία της ουριάζεται σε ερείπια. Το μέσο ετήσιο εισόδημα κατά άτομο είναι $20. Σήμερα έχει ανέβει στις $13.000. Η εκπληκτική αυτή ανάκαμψη συνέβη παρά την παντελή έλλειψη φυσικών πλουτοπαραγωγικών πηγών της Ιαπωνίας. Περπατώντας στους δρόμους του Τόκιο, βλέπεις παντού τα προϊόντα της επανάστασης των κομπιούτερ. Η ταχύτητα της ιαπωνικής βιομηχανίας και η επινοητικότητά της στην εφαρμογή του μικροτσίπ την κάνει να προηγείται κατά πολύ όλων των ανεπτυγμένων χωρών του κόσμου. Στην περιοχή Χαγκιμπάρα, τα chips πωλούνται ελεύθερα όπου να είναι. Τα παιδιά μπορούν να μπαίνουν ελεύθερα στα μαγαζιά και να δοκιμάζουν νέα παιχνίδια. Τον Οκτώβριο του 1981, η Ιαπωνία ανακοινώνει τα μακροπρόθεσμα σχέδιά της, αποφασισμένη να αποφύγει τον ανταγωνισμό με την Αμερική πάνω στη σημερινή τεχνολογία. Το δεκαετές πρόγραμμά της είναι ένα άλμα προς μια γενιά κομπιούτερ του μέλλοντος, τους κομπιούτερ της 5ης γενιάς.
In 1981, the Japanese announced a 10-year goal. They were going to bring intelligent computers to the world. By intelligent, they meant computers that could understand natural language just as you and I are speaking. They would be computers that could understand pictures. They were computers that could understand handwriting and, of course, the keyboard. These were computers that you didn't need to know how to program, where you could pose a question and the computer would say, what you mean is you'd like to do this, and you would say yes. This was an audacious, very challenging goal. Nobody believed it could be done. People are beginning to change their minds.
Για να εκπληρώσει μια τέτοια φιλοδοξία, η κυβέρνηση ανέθεσε το συντονισμό των ερευνών σε ένα ίδρυμα και ενέκρινε προϋπολογισμό 440 εκατομμυρίων δολαρίων για το δεκαετές πρόγραμμα. Την όλη μελέτη διεύθυνε ένας εξέχων νεαρός μηχανικός, ο Καζουχίρο Φούτσι. Ο μέσος όρος ηλικίας των συνεργατών του είναι τα 30.
Think about the other things that could be done offline later on. Features, taking values, being unspecified for some values, and other kinds of things. You have lots of other ways in which you could optimize and attain simplification.
Excuse me, yes, sir. May I interrupt you? Say hello.
Nice. Could I, I'm Jeff Pullum. The director of the whole bank. Oh, very nice to meet you. Gerald Gazdar sends his best wishes.
Thank you.
And it's nice to be here. I'm sorry I'm 3 months late visiting your institute.
So,
I'm already having a very interesting time.
So, please continue. 世の中には悲観的な人も楽観的な人もいますから、そういう見方の人がいてもちっとも不思議ではないと思います。ただ言いたいことは、このプロジェクトというのは日本のナショナルプロジェクトなわけです。ですから必ず実現できるというような優しい目標ではなくて、危険もあるけれども、しかしこれに成功すれば将来、日本だけではなくて人類のために役に立つことを手がけるべきだというのが我々の意見ですね。ですからみんなができるというようなものというのはナショナルプロジェクトにはふさわしくないと思います。これは民間の企業がそれぞれ追求すればいいことだと思います。
The Japanese have virtually no natural resources. They depend entirely on trade. Their single resource is a very well-educated and diligent population. And this fits in perfectly with a country that wants to be #1 in the information age. Another reason, and connected with this, was the idea that the Japanese were able to copy things but never able to innovate. And I think there was a strong feeling among Japanese scientists and industrialists that it was time to put that stereotype to rest. It was time to innovate and show the world that, in fact, the Japanese are just as intelligent as any other people on the face of the earth.
Τα αποτελέσματα του προγράμματος στα 3 πρώτα χρόνια ήταν τόσο ενθαρρυντικά που προχώρησαν στην κατασκευή των πρώτων πρωτοτύπων.
これ10年計画でですね、私ども1000億ぐらいの金がいるという計画を立てたわけですが、今のところは3年間ですね。で3年間はだいたいそれほどですね、初めのイニシャルの段階ですから、それほど多額のお金を要しなかったわけです。でそれについてはですね、ほぼ8割ぐらいのお金を確保してやってこられましたんで、さっき申し上げた通り、今まではですね、初期の段階においては大体研究の目的通りにですね、研究を達成できたと。で問題はですね、残る7年間非常に多額のお金を必要としますけれども、これがどれだけ確保できるかという問題だろうと思いますね。
Η Αμερική αντιμετωπίζει σήμερα σοβαρά την ιαπωνική απειλή. Έστω και αν στην Wall Street υπάρχει η συνηθισμένη αδιαφιλονίκητη εμπιστοσύνη της αμερικανικής υπεροχής.
I view it, the Japanese are really not a threat to the U.S. computer market, the U.S. computer business, for one simple reason. Throughout the last thousands of years in Japanese history, you trace back, and the Japanese expertise has really always been in adapting, refining, improving, copying existing technology, existing products that come from elsewhere. Now, in the U.S. computer industry, things are moving very, very fast. The technology and the products are hurtling ahead at such a breakneck speed. The product cycles are so short that I don't think the Japanese are going to be able to get a foothold in this market, because they won't be able to bring their expertise of refinement and improvement to bear.
I think it was recognized in Europe for the challenge that it is, long before it was recognized in the United States. The British and the French and the European Common Market each made responses to the Japanese challenge. Each took the Japanese challenge very seriously.
Οι παγκόσμιες βιομηχανικές δυνάμεις γνωρίζουν ύφεση. Το ατσάλι μειώνεται γρήγορα και οι πιο πλούσιοι τομείς προσπαθούν να προσαρμοστούν. Η Ιαπωνία το έχει καταλάβει. Οι Ηνωμένες Πολιτείες μόλις αρχίζουν να αντιμετωπίζουν την αλλαγή. Απ' την άλλη μεριά, τα ευρωπαϊκά κράτη υποφέρουν από εσωτερικές διαμάχες. Το σχέδιο ERT-1 αποτελεί εμπορική επιτυχία, αλλά ένα άλλο πρόγραμμα, το ESPRIT, σχετικό με την μικροηλεκτρονική, αργεί να ξεκινήσει. Το 1 δισεκατομμύριο δολάρια του συνολικού προϋπολογισμού του είναι περίπου το μισό ετήσιο κεφάλαιο που διαθέτει για έρευνες μια και μόνη αμερικάνικη φίρμα όπως η AT&T.
Il faut, pour bien comprendre, voir les choses très pratiquement. Dans la communauté, jusqu'au moment où le programme ESPRIT a été approuvé, il n'y avait pas une vue de ce qui était la priorité qu'il fallait réaliser. Or, dans des domaines comme ceux-ci, si on n'a pas un objectif, si on ne définit pas quels sont les besoins fondamentaux, on bricole. Et d'un autre côté, il n'y avait pas de structure qui permettait de mettre les entreprises ensemble, parce que chacun de nos marchés sont trop petits. Et que les seules structures qui avaient été purement nationales, ce qui fait que cela conduisait à ce que chacun essaie, mais sans en avoir la possibilité, de réussir de son côté. Et donc l'originalité d'esprit, c'est d'une part de se fixer un objectif stratégique. Là, nous imitons les Japonais, ou nous prenons des Japonais ce qu'ils ont pris de nous d'abord, et que nous allons leur rechercher ensuite. Et nous prenons des Américains la notion que s'il n'y a pas un grand marché, nous n'allons pas réussir pratiquement, nous allons être les plus malins, mais nous n'allons pas réussir pratiquement. Et nous avons une série d'exemples où les Européens sont les inventeurs et les Japonais ou les Américains ceux qui font la mise en œuvre.
Το Δημοτικό Σχολείο της Τσουκούμπα είναι το ιαπωνικό πρότυπο του μέλλοντος. Τα παιδιά μαθαίνουν τα μαθήματά τους με τη βοήθεια προσωπικών κομπιούτερ. Ένα πρόγραμμα που η κυβέρνηση θα ήθελε να εφαρμόσει σε όλη τη χώρα.
子どもたちがそろばんというのを使ってるわけですけども、それと同じようにですね、コンピューターが日常の生活にコンピューターが不可欠になってくるんじゃないかと思います。で、そういうためにですね、そのためにですね、まず必要なことは、一つはその先生ですね、学校の先生にコンピューターの使い方を生徒に教える能力を与えると、あるいはコンピューターを教材として用いるということですね。まずそれから始めないといけないわけですね。それからそれがあって初めてですね、今度は子どもたちに、普通の一般のコンピューター教育ができると、こういうことになると思うんですね。
Όλα τα στοιχεία της άμεσης επανάστασης της πληροφορικής είναι πια στη θέση τους. Όμως για τους περισσότερους από εμάς, το μέλλον παραμένει αδιευκρίνιστο.
We are going to depend upon computers to a greater extent, and I don't see that as bad, because the problems that society faces are now large enough so that without computers, we don't have much chance to solve them. With computers, there's a chance of reorganizing, chiefly, for instance, in the fields of education. I look forward to a complete revolution in education, one in which we have one-to-one teaching once again, where youngsters and adults too can learn from advanced teaching machines with which they can interact, which will have at their disposal large libraries, computerized libraries, can bring to you any data you want, any books, pamphlets, material of any kind. You can ask questions, gain information in any field that interests you, move off in any direction. You'll still be going to school if you wish, but at home you can follow where your heart leads. And this, I think, would be the greatest change since the establishment of mass public education. That made most people literate. Now we're going to have most people anxious to learn, because it's not something which they must engage in as part of a large group, everyone studying the same thing at the same time and the same speed. But each person following his own interests at his own time, his own speed, and his own way. This will lead to an immense growth of creativity, I think, because almost everybody, it seems to me, is creative in one way or another. And this will encourage that creativity instead of stifling it. And we might end up with a society in which we can move forward in extraordinary ways.
It's interesting to speculate about what could be done in future computers. Right now, the computer is still a rather unfriendly device for the average person to use. It doesn't forgive mistakes very well. It tends to do what you tell it to do instead of what you wanted it to do, like some children I know. But I think as time goes by, we will spend more and more of the computing time trying to build in an understanding of the human being so that the computer can respond in a more human-like way to its commands. I think that with the possibilities of vast numbers of elements, we also may tend to organize the computer in a different way than we have. The current architecture, the von Neumann architecture of the computer, which is very deterministic, a given input will produce a given output, is not suitable for many applications that we have. Example, pattern recognition is very difficult to do with the current architecture. Yet it's something a child can do when he's 6 weeks old. He can recognize the human beings behind him and separate his mother from the rest of those human beings. It'll be a long time before we're able to devise a computer that will do that. Any 16-year-old can drive an automobile, and I wouldn't trust a computer to drive me to work and stop at the red lights and avoid the traffic on the way. So there's lots of things that yet cannot be done with a computer, where by adding more complexity to the computer, we'll be able to accomplish those ends, I'm sure.
Τα ρομπότ υπάρχουν εδώ και αρκετό καιρό. Η Ιαπωνία είναι πάλι επικεφαλής. Το 1984, 67.435 ρομπότ λειτουργούν ήδη στη βιομηχανία, έναντι 4.000 περίπου στις Ηνωμένες Πολιτείες. Γενικά είναι αποδεκτά όταν κάνουν δουλειές επικίνδυνες ή βαρετές για τον άνθρωπο. Σταδιακά όμως, οι προχωρημένοι κομπιούτερ και η επιστήμη της τεχνητής ευφυΐας δίνουν στα ρομπότ μια αυτονομία, μια ταυτότητα, έναν πρωτόγονο εγκέφαλο.
in recognizing an individual, which the machine cannot do yet, because there is no precise, explicit way to explain to the machine how to go about recognizing, let us say, recognizing a face, recognizing even a much more simple pattern. Actually, there are two ways of thinking. One I call biological thinking. That is how a dog thinks. And the other is machine thinking. And the question is my own thinking more like that of a dog or that of a machine? And I must confess, I resemble the dog more than the machine. Even though I have a bit of a bent and I have used mathematics. When I recognize something, when I use my brains in connection with intuition, emotion, a number of other things, that is a natural thing. That is no work. When I use it for mathematics or science, then I am working. It is in a way not a natural thing. To call it something higher may or may not be justified. To call it something different is certainly right. Now there is something very new in the machines. And that is machines can acquire tremendous memories. They couldn't in the past. But the modern machines begin to acquire the really very, very rich memories that animals have and even man has. At the same time, we can introduce in these machines whose elements have become much smaller and cheaper, we can use multiple parallel processing. The same kind of thing goes on in parallel in many places, and that can be fitted together. Actually, much of biological thinking is based on the process of association. This reminds me of that. These are more complex connections than simple logical sequences. And machines can begin to imitate that. Will brains become obsolete? I don't know. For the time being, there can be no question that the man-machine combination is more powerful than man alone or machine alone.